We're going to talk a little bit about TRT, which by definition is therapy. The problem is, especially how it's talked about in most social media platforms.
Yep.
It's the catch-all, everything can be solved.
Right.
And I think it's this miseducation about what it is, what it can do, and if it's actually going to solve the problem that you have.
Well, July 4th. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Aggressively Healthy Podcast. We're back on another Friday. I'm Dr. Marko Lujic.
And I'm Mike Ranfone.
And this is the Aggressively Healthy Podcast powered by RTS Health, which, by the way, is like a new style of healthcare. If anybody doesn't know, and this is your first time tuning in.
I was unaware.
Michael Ranfone started a Ranfone Training Systems, which was a exercise facility many years ago, 17 to 20 years ago, in a very small garage-sized gym.
I'm old.
It evolved to about 17,000 square feet, and then we adopted another bunch of 8,000 square feet across the street. Now we have a complex of healthcare called RTS Health. So, Michael, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, this one actually was inspired by one of you guys, and this is why we appreciate and encourage for people to write messages, ask questions, because we want this education to be as curated as possible for our listeners. So an audience member wrote in and said, I'd love to hear about your experiences as dads, former athletes, and how father time has affected your personal hormone health and what you've done about it. And I think it's an important conversation because we have it literally almost every day.
Every day.
But it's also important specifically to male health, because we can speak on that, because a lot of men are dealing with problems and they're less likely to actually talk about medical problems, seek out medical advice, or just flat out admit that there's something wrong. And probably you see this all the time, clinically speaking, is that someone has been sitting on an issue for years before it's become a critical mass situation. They're like, am I going to die? Yeah. And I think that's important for you to just kind of explain that, like, we're a safe space for that type of stuff.
Yeah. And oddly enough, this morning, I actually had a conversation in the gym about just that. And one of our gym members came up and was like, I really hope I can get my husband in here, and he's not doing so well. And the whole base of that is, as a dude or a guy or whatever we want to call ourselves, it is very difficult in life to say, hey, I need help, especially to a friend that might be the guy that used to drink beers and punch in the shoulder and be like, oh, we're so tough. It's then hard to be like, guy, I'm fucking really hurting bad. We need some help here. The second thing I think is, as young men, and I try to break this with my kids, and I think this might spark more conversation down the road, but when my son cries about something now, I never say, oh, stop crying. I always actually say, let it out, man. Fucking, if it feels good to cry, cry. If it feels good to yell, go outside. A couple nights ago, he's having a little meltdown, and we discussed how to handle it. I was like, just let him kind of let it out and then go help him figure it out. But as dudes and guys growing up, sometimes you don't get that, right? Because as a dad, we always want to promote this feeling tougher thing. Yeah. But there is a moment where you got to be a little bit more soft with kids, teenagers, and adults. And I think it's the conversation we're trying to have today. So I see it a lot in here with the guys that come in and they're at the end. And in their mind, and actually yesterday I had a guy come in, he's like, I'm at rock bottom. I was like, no, rock bottom is truly 6 feet under. That's rock bottom. So in this environment, like Mike said, we want you as men or women, but men we're speaking about today, to be able to actually embrace this as a therapeutic style culture. Yeah. And I think the therapy you could get is reasoning with he might have giant muscles and veins and this and that, but if you went up to him and said, hey, what's your day-to-day like? Mike might be like, yeah, it sucks. Sometimes I got to drive my kids around, or, hey, yeah, I was scrambling. I didn't get to eat. We're also in the game too. Now that parlays into how do we build these people's coping skills, right? And how do we invite them to learn that if you do all of these other things we're talking about and offering, that it can actually help you. I would love to hear advice from just motivating somebody to get out of bed to go to the gym as maybe a beginning. And then how do we embrace an environment like we're giving people to kind of come in welcome them and expose them to the fact that they can feel a little vulnerable in this environment.
Yeah, I first think about like some of the extreme examples of, let's say, especially for men right now, the incidence of male suicide rate is exponential compared to pretty much every demographic.
Exponential.
So if a male isn't going to even seek help and he wants to kill himself, then that guy who's overweight or feeling lethargic or has no libido, like, what are the odds that he's just going to be like, you know what, I'm going to go talk to someone?
No
you know
shot.
What I mean?
Right.
And that's why it's unfortunate that we both have to operate in such significant rears to get people on track. Now, I can't think of an example off the top of my head where we weren't somewhat successful, but that success starts with the idea that someone acknowledges that there is a problem.
Yep.
And that they also would like to at least explore opportunities for resolution.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can't provide, that you can't provide. So what we're trying to do is broadcast the idea that this is an environment that is inviting of that situation. Yep. So if that's running through your head, it's like, and this question has been asked multiple times for years, it's like, come in for a 30-minute free consult and just air it out.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, if you don't like what you hear, if you don't think this is the right thing, great. But it is, no matter what, a step in the right direction. And obviously we're going to talk a little bit about TRT, which by definition is therapy.
Yep.
Like the problem is, especially how it's talked about in most social media platforms, it's the catch-all, everything can be solved.
Right.
And I think it's this miseducation about what it is, what it can do, and if it's actually going to solve the problem that you have.
Yeah, I'm going to nerd out for one moment. I just want to get straight into the biochem, because somebody yesterday was like, well, or a couple of days ago, are you just going to prescribe testosterone? And then I said, well, that might be part of the plan. And then they're like, is testosterone going to just like give me energy? And then it clicked. People think like you take testosterone and then it's this energy thing. It's actually a chemical signal to a muscle cell to then increase mitochondria. So it would be like, hey, Connecticut, build more power plants. Connecticut can't generate more electricity without building more power plants, independent of the amount of coal we burn. We learned it really quickly with electric cars. Like, you can build all the electric cars you want. If you don't have the grid to charge them, it doesn't matter. So you can give somebody all the testosterone. At the cellular level, it needs to build more power plants inside the cells, which are mitochondria. That expression of mitochondrial desire for more energy becomes a surface receptor, a mailbox for more testosterone to stimulate that more, which then puts out more mailboxes to receive more insulin, which then gets more protein and sugar in the cell to build more muscle. Now, the piece of that you want to take home is the testosterone might be the thing that helps, but it's the million other biochemical sequences. So when we say, oh, here's TRT, it is the therapy. And it is the wonder drug. Absolutely. Yes, I will go on record hearing that. Because at the end of the day, you tell me, are you 16 or 80? Who are you betting on to live longer? The 80-year-old or the 16-year-old? There's one variable difference in chemical compound, right? So at the end of the day, we have to discuss it as a tool for therapeutics. And I think the environment of exercise becomes the best place to bring that in. Why? Because let's define what we're actually talking about, right? Let's make sure we're all speaking the same language. TRT stands for testosterone replacement therapy. And really, it's hormone optimization therapy, replacement therapy, whatever you want to call it. Oh, we got a couple flies in here. So at the end of the day, what we need to do is recognize something. A fuel source and fuel inside a human's body is a really important thing. And TRT and the delivery of it will help all of your metabolic fuel. So there's multiple ways. It comes in several forms. You can have topicals, you can have pills, you can have injectables, you can have pellets. There's multiple manners of delivery. And some of those are good, some of those are bad. The bigger issue is this. From a training and nutrition perspective, how do you allow somebody to realize, like, all right, we've progressed as far as we can progress with what we're doing. What is potentially the next step in optimization? Because that conversation to get them from a physical anatomic movement into like, oh, we're about to mess with the chemicals in my body. That's a big transition of like mental capacity, because it's hard to even get in the gym. Then it's harder to understand how to work out. And now it's like, oh, you want to do chemical compounds? So how do we get people to realize that, like, who it's for, who it might be used on in a gym space, and who might benefit from it?
Yeah. So there's two things that I'll touch on, and I'm going to ask your assistance on this, is that, like, when you ask the question, who is TRT for in the context of a male population, you think about already, okay, so I can go to a place and get my labs checked and my testosterone's low. And they will then give you testosterone replacement therapy, right? The fundamental problem, which I think you have solved for, is not asking if the testosterone is low enough for exogenous sources, but why is it low?
Right.
And that is a little difference that has huge practical changes along the way.
Yep.
So if someone has low testosterone, maybe you can just tell us real quickly, what are some of the reasons why, not lifestyle-wise, because we can get into that later, but mechanically, chemically, neurologically, why would someone's testosterone be low?
So there's a lot of different factors. I think it's a very vascular driven issue. And I think the blood vessels in testicles and ovaries and the sex organs of our body are a little bit different than some of the blood vessels elsewhere in terms of their longevity and ability to handle stress. Mood in terms of suppression of testosterone can also play a fact. If you're depressed, if you're constantly stressed, which is an external environmental factor, but like the way you handle that will then affect your body's ability to cope, which then protects it or helps it to make more or less hormones. Now, the initial initiation of stress into a human body should initiate some response, like, oh, I need to block this and I need to be strong to resist this. But when doing that and the body asks for that, if the body doesn't respond to the brain's desire to respond to that environmental stress, it's just going to keep getting more depressed. So like the stimulating hormones from the brain, if they start going up and up and up and the body is not returning, they'll eventually wear out. It's kind of like diabetes of your testosterone. So if you look at diabetes as a reduction in sensitivity to insulin, imagine aging as a reduction in sensitivity to your hormones. And I think that's the definition. I just came up with that now, actually. I never really thought about that. But you can use it for each hormone, insulin or testosterone. So you are a diabetic because you are resistant to insulin. Why? Because you might have gained too much weight. You might not exercise, your muscle mass. The same thing goes for testosterone. You become less sensitive to testosterone, and your testicles and ovaries and in women stop making as much testosterone, because why would the body keep asking for it if it's not getting it? Right?
Or utilizing
it. So the external stressors, which comes back to like the social stress of environment and the real reasons why hormones might be depressed, is actually more biopsychosocial. It's a slippery slope because it's chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
Once it starts, it keeps getting worse. And then if you're depressed and you don't go out and exercise and your muscle mass goes down and you decrease your vascular supply to your whole body, well, that's going to decrease vascular supply to your testicles, ovaries, and it's a really slippery slope. So I think the best answer to that is, I believe it's a non-time related thing. I believe it's actually an external stressor, where then if you don't provide yourself with the right amount of movement and nutrition at that exact time, you kind of start that trickle effect, which then comes into play. Like, is it at 15, 18, 25, 30, 35, 40? We don't really know. I believe it's the day they're born, right? Like, I would start with pediatric medicine if I were really running the world of healthcare. But at the end of the day, that investigation is difficult, say anatomically, or to perfect the diagnosis from some marker, because it is a transition of external stressors and your response to them. Now, in the exercise world, like if we think about it, the mode of operations, right? If I give somebody T and I give them testosterone, even in the state that I just described, it might not change anything, right? So what is the right order of operations in terms of like, okay, Mike, I met you at Stop and Shop and you said to me, oh, I'm a co-founder of RTS Health. We do this health thing. We do metabolic health, exercise, nutrition, great. How can you help me? Because I just want to do everything.
Yeah.
And what would you tell me to do?
We have a really nice case study on this. So RTS, the training side, has been around longer than the health side. So our hypothesis was, what if we gave people who are already invested in their health and their well-being and they're counting calories and doing the training, What if we could then supplement what lifestyle interventions couldn't?
Yep.
And the results were absurd.
Insane.
Like everyone got better immediately.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe I'm biased here, is because the body was so primed to receive that biochemical resurgence that it just works so perfectly. And now that we have a bigger audience or membership from various backgrounds, we can see that everyone gets better, but the rate of change and the size of change is more favorable to those who have already had locked in lifestyle and environmental factors that are favorable. Yeah. And it probably just creates an internal environment because the infrastructure is more favorable to respond to what you want to do chemically.
And I think, Mike, I mean, this is going to sound super weird. You know, when people get to the point in their life and they're like, I'm ready to receive God.
Yeah.
It's the same shit. It's all chemical. When somebody comes out in public and is like, I made it to the point where I accepted God. You know what happened? You didn't like accept God because you randomly like something shook your house. You accepted God because the chemicals in your brain had you balanced enough to be like, oh, I probably shouldn't continue doing A, B, and C. I'm not able to put full accountability on myself because I can't believe I'm about to change this whole entire lifestyle. I got to credit something external. It's not just me because I've been devalued my whole life. It's God or whatever you might want it to be. Now, I'm not saying religion is bad. I am just saying sometimes I think we give too much credit to it, and we should actually value the human's ability to go do it.
Yeah.
So yes, as Mike said, you got to be willing to accept it chemically. If you are a 400-pound diabetic, you've never gotten off a couch. I actually just had this conversation with someone online. You can't just initiate treatment in a random, chaotic way if they're not exercising because you'll actually backfire the whole system. So I think what you said is the exact thing people need to realize. Now, you can come in, be a candidate for the medicine, and then introduce the exercise, and if you're willing to do it all, great. Yeah. But the barrier to entry should actually be your willingness to exercise. Because if you're unwilling to do that, what are we really doing? And tell me, like, if you're not exercising, you're not sleeping well, what is the difference in what you see in performance in terms of strength training?
Well, you're automatically capping the benefit of doing the thing you think is appropriate.
Yes.
And like we joke about this. We joke about this all the time.
It's a governor.
Like, but yeah, it's like, all right, so, and we talk about investment strategy all the time. Our goal is to maximize your ROI on what you're doing.
Right.
So if you can do one thing that yields 10%, but if you do this other thing, you get 30%, why wouldn't you? And we joke about it all the time where it's, if you go to one of these, without naming names, a testosterone clinic that checks for your testosterone, identifies that you have low testosterone, and it gives you testosterone, but you're 50 pounds overweight, you eat too much, you drink too much, you don't exercise. It's like, so you just took this guy with low testosterone, treated a symptom, and now you made 10 more symptoms. Right? So is that guy that's unfit, out of shape, overweight, now more likely for something worse than just having low testosterone?
Yep.
Because you did, like, it was the right thing. It's like low testosterone, let's get his testosterone up.
Right.
So then what happens in 3 to 5 years? I don't know. Like, what are the potential outcomes?
Without lifestyle change?
Correct.
Not that great, right? Because
so at best he stays the same.
At best he stays the same. He might even become a hypertensive. He might even develop worsening blood pressure.
Right.
Now, we could dive down roads of other chemical introductions in those scenarios to help, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you're not moving and you're not doing the work, the result's going to be total garbage. And if you kind of counterintuitively, and you were kind of going to lead into this, but as you get leaner and more insulin sensitive, you can actually handle more food, right? But for those people that are overweight and think they're eating too much and that's what's causing their overweight problem, what's the next stage in this? Because the reason I want to bring this up is it's hard enough to get people to try to exercise the right way. Once they do, it's then harder, I believe, to convince them that once they're exercising and they're leaner, they actually have to increase their caloric intake in terms of carbs.
Yeah.
So now if you don't have that stimulation of the carbohydrates and you do have all this testosterone and you do have all these chemical changes, without the food, what does that look like?
Again, you just reduce the amount of benefit you can ultimately have. And a lot of our clients want to maximize stuff. Like they're kind of type A, they're really successful in their business or their professional careers. They want it all. And it's like, well, you kind of have to do other things to get the most out of it. So you can take all the testosterone in the world, you can train, but if you don't eat well, you're not supplying your body with the resources to maximize what you could be getting from that intervention by itself.
Yeah, and I think people misunderstand a little bit of the carb-insulin interaction. Me and you spoke about this actually in the hallway of the office yesterday. So if you had like 3 muscle cells and you had 5 glucose molecules, and this is a diabetic, maybe 2 of these get used and you have 3 extra ones floating around. Now, if this diabetic starts exercising, these muscle cells become more sensitive. Now all 5 get used. Now, the pancreas is yelling, if all 5 get used, these 5 get used. The carbohydrates now on these are sensitive, but there's no more muscle cells, so then the excess sugar won't get used. If we don't resensitize, exercise, or build this population of muscle to eat the carbohydrate. But if you remain with the 3 and the 5, and you don't fix the diabetes, you can do all the exercise you want, but if you don't increase sensitivity to insulin, it's not going to change. It'll adjust. And at the end of the day, once you get 5 and 5, you'll use all of them. And what you want to do is backfill with the carbs so that you continuous for those 5 cells to keep getting all the food they want. If you cut the carbs off on that diabetic experience and now you've sensitized these 5 cells to now eat 5 pieces of glucose, right? And you've sensitized them, but you don't keep feeding them, they will lose sensitization. And then your blood sugars will go back up. So you have to feed the machine. It is completely counterintuitive. We always look at it as a supply chain issue. Diabetics don't have a supply chain issue. Diabetics have a use issue. They have plenty of supply chain. There's plenty of carbohydrates. It's the muscle mass that they don't have to actually do the work. So then it gets to the point where at some point in somebody's life, these people get lean. And now we've got them calorically with exercise, nutrition. We haven't treated them with any testosterone. They've gotten themselves down to a lean mass. They've baselined, say, to 15, 18% body fat, and then they say, well, I'm plateaued. Because now the muscle build is the really, really difficult part without your endocrine system balanced.
Right.
So now you put them through rigors of lifting. You try to tell them, well, the recovery and the lift and eat well. That's really hard to do if you're lean and now you're being told to eat more. This is where I believe the hormone replacement optimization becomes a really big factor. When you see that happen, do you notice differences in these people's trajectories and what's going on in the gym when they do it the right way versus just coming in and being like, oh, I'm on testosterone, I'm overweight, I don't work out yet, I'm just going to start? What do you see in that difference?
So I will use a kind of the opposite of that scenario where someone who might come in, maybe not under your care, but we've had people that have been seen by other doctors that have been giving testosterone, and they're like, so I started testosterone and I'm still overweight and I still am pre-diabetic and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, because you probably should have been leaner before you started testosterone.
Right.
And I think this is what you're talking about is the opposite of that is why do we want people to try to get leaner before they go on a hormone replacement therapy is because if you have excess body fat, how does that play the role in conversion to estrogen?
Yep.
And inflammatory markers.
Yep.
And why then you need more testosterone to do the same thing that we want chemically, but not physiologically.
Yep.
So that's where I'm at when I think about these things. It's like our goal is to get them as lean as possible so they need less of a testosterone shot or dose, and that they get greater benefit because now things are compounding in the same direction.
Yes.
And that's where we get this person that's like, oh my God, I got to eat so much food and I get leaner.
Because if you're 200 pounds of 30% body fat or you're 200 pounds of 10% body fat, your muscle tissue density
talk about that.
Is like insanely different, right? So if you're a 190 pound guy and you're 10% body fat, or you're 240 pounds and you're 30% body fat, your insulin sensitivities are totally different. Your carb necessities are totally different. And lean mass is really what chews through metabolic demand, right? So you want it to give you mobility, kinetic energy, movement. You need it for metabolic energy and processing of nutrition just to keep you healthy at baseline. But the biggest thing with muscle mass is truly maintaining and regulating your body sugar.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at it not like your pancreas maintains your blood sugars. Your muscle mass actually maintains your blood sugars. Your pancreas is just a thing in the back being like, maintain the blood sugars. And your muscle's like, fine, I hear you. Shut up. I got this, right? Yeah. Until the muscles are like, haha, he doesn't care. We don't care. Keep yelling. That's diabetes.
Yeah.
Right? So once the brain is like, fuck it, and the body's like, well, I'm done working out, they essentially give the middle finger to the pancreas, and the pancreas keeps yelling and yelling and yelling until the pancreas shuts up. So I think muscle mass body comp, we talk about it all the time. If your body comp is not truly optimized, then chemical optimization might not even be the first step to reach those new goals or plateaus. Now, chemical intervention with some movement to start your journey, fantastic. Wonderful.
Yeah.
But if you're going to come and only do chemical and you're not going to move, I don't know what to tell you, right? Save yourself the dough.
Well, can you just talk about that a little bit? Like, I think if people just heard about, like, we want you lean, we want you to lose fat, it's like, we're not fat shaming anyone.
No.
It is completely from the objective data that you're looking at,
yeah,
to inform them that this would be the best case scenario.
Yeah.
So walk through like 5 lab values that you'd be like, hey, this is why we need to get you lean, because if we don't, these things, regardless of my opinion about you being lean,
yeah,
are going to make a difference in terms of usefulness or utility of a testosterone replacement.
Yeah. So this is actually a really good question. So I use something which is called fasting insulin. A lot of PCPs don't really check it because I don't know if they know what to do with it. So a fasting insulin can give you a lot of information in terms of insulin sensitivities, independent of blood glucose at the time, independent of hemoglobin A1C, and independent of 1,5-8-hydroglucitol. Your insulin sensitivity is everything. So if your fasting insulin is above 10, no matter who you are, independent of age, size, whatever, you gotta start to look at your insulin sensitivity issues. Now, once you've looked at a fasting insulin, if that triggers a thought, you then can go look at hemoglobin A1C. Now, hemoglobin A1C is a lagging indicator of overexposure of hemoglobin to excess levels of sugar. So 5% of hemoglobin A1C is the amount that the body, normal wear and tear, can deal with, right? So you got 5% of your hemoglobin, normally shaped like this, accepting oxygen, would be misshaped, can't. Hemoglobin A1C would then give you, the insulin level actually correlates to what's going on over time, and this person might be heading towards or away from insulin sensitivity issues. So those two are really big deals. Now, if you use those two and a DEXA scan and GGT in liver labs with some AST, ALT, depending on what you know about the person's lifestyle, you can then look at grams per centimeter squared of area covered in the DEXA's fat content of visceral, as well as total grams. Now, total grams are less important than centimeters squared covered. So if those then are in ranges that tell you got a little bit of a fatty liver, insulin sensitivity with a fatty liver, independent of your fasting insulin, has to be addressed at the liver level. So you can give that person insulin, which the world does, metformin, which the world does, Jardians, which the world does, which will stimulate whatever they want to stimulate in the pancreas and blah, 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 blah. You are not changing the receptor quality in the muscle. So if you do not burn the liver fat and you do not address the fasting insulin, it doesn't matter what you do to their sugar levels. Who cares? Because the body's not recognizing the actual sugar level. It's just reacting to the fact that it can't react to insulin. So those 4 parameters are a big deal. Then, deeper in that conversation, if you have spent hours with these people, which I do, and you know exactly their lifestyle and exercise habits, you can then go to their BUN, total protein, and albumin. Now, using BUN as their just God-given number of protein for that day, because it really means nothing else, and their total protein, you can then say to them, hey, your muscles now, dependent on how much activity you're doing, are either stealing amino acids from your liver or not. which then relative to insulin sensitivity can give you a really good indication if you're actually insulin sensitive. Because you can give somebody all the protein they want, you can give somebody plenty of things to do. If they're not insulin sensitive, their total protein made by their liver will be through the roof, because all of the protein will go to their liver, none of the protein will go to their muscle. Now, that could be an insulin sensitivity issue. It could be an exercise issue. It could be a protein intake issue. There's a lot of things it could be. But if you decipher what that is with the insulin knowledge, you can then consciously say to somebody, hey, your cellular level insulin sensitivity is what we need to get after. And that analysis of lab work, yes, with LFTs, with fasting insulins, and I'll keep a couple other pieces of information for a later episode, but I can nail it on the point without using these HOMA scores that the hospital uses for, oh, you're a little greater than 2 sensitive. No, I will tell you, you are terribly insensitive. You're not eating enough protein. You're not eating enough carbs. And then carb consumption can be dictated off what I just said. Yes. And then I'm going to give everybody in the world a really big piece of information, because what is the golden question, the biggest mystery on the planet? You and I sit down and we discuss nutrition, and Michael Ranfone says, I eat 100 grams of carbs, 100 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat. Marko Lujic says, I eat 100 grams of protein, 100 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat. Both of us can do that and leave that table with completely different caloric intakes. So now how can I then tell you that your caloric intakes are independently off relative to protein, carbs, and fat? Well, I can use your total protein for protein. I then can use albumin for your total caloric needs being met. Now, if the cholesterol bucket's where it is, I know you got a fatty liver, and your total protein is high, but you're telling me you're eating carbs, well, then your insulin's so insensitive, and you're probably carbohydrate depleted or overrun, depending on how much sensitivity your muscle is showing based on total protein. Those are kind of the analytics, right? And I don't know how to explain it differently. There's no way to really dumb that down. But like, if you want to deal with chemical metabolism and you're a doctor, you have to know that. And if you don't, you're literally just throwing garbage at people, right?
And I would also say, which you have this really unique perspective, you not only know like the chemical interpretation, but you also know the practical application. Right?
Well,
like, you know what to do with that. Because if you said that to any one of your patients, they'd be like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
What do I do now?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's interesting because the next segment we're going to talk about is what's the personal story. And we're supposed to start with Mike's. And I think we should get to that. But truly, Mike, I don't know, I just thought of this today too. I am the N of 1. I was the first experiment through this whole program, right? I came into RTS 2009. I mean, I'd been involved with the gym here and there for fucking forever, but I actually was like, all right, I'm going to change my life for this. You know, I needed to do it. I walk in, I was overweight. My insulin levels were through the roof. I was drinking booze. I was like just not taking care.
Were you on meds? Were you on
I was on lisinopril, a statin. Yeah, I mean, come on. Why would you not want blood pressure meds at 35? That's a great way to go. So I came in here as the person we're talking about, literally as the person we're talking about. But I bought into everything, and I know myself, and I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to do it all because I'm kind of sick of the old lifestyle. No problem. So what did I do? I trained. You gave me incredibly good training advice. I started eating better. I got incredibly good at dieting in terms of normal eating etiquette. So dieting then became normal etiquette. And then I trained, and I got to the point where we actually won a fucking physique show. And we won. And I made some money. We made a fucking big stink. It was great. And I couldn't really change beyond that. And that journey took me down to about 180 pounds from 240. Lean. I was probably, I don't know, 6-7% body fat. I felt amazing. And then you said to me, you got to start eating way more carbs. And I was like, ooh, I don't know about that. So I did. 10 pounds came back, and then I got heavier, but it was hard to build muscle. Remember, we had like a couple months where I was like, no, I'm determined. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then we said, well, let's see what this can do for plateaus. So I personally started my TRT journey. I ended up in here with a free testosterone at that point in time, a little after that, of 6, with a total around 400. And I was working out every day, looking muscular and feeling like, oh, I'm alpha. And I still wasn't really feeling that perfect. And then I began the hormone journey. Now, my body instantly was like, oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I put my levels, I keep my testosterone around a free of 18 to 24. That's where I feel really comfortable. I don't shoot it crazy high. It's at the upper level of normal. And the benefit is profound with thyroid and progesterone and the rest. So my journey was really this. Like, I kept hitting plateaus. Now, fortunately, I feel like I was a little robotic in my training, and you were pretty fucking good at what you do. So we had an experience that the plateau might have been maybe different than every human on the planet's plateau. But listen, at the end of the day, all of our plateaus are going to be different.
Yeah.
So I've been down this road. I'm not sitting here, like you said, with a perspective of like, go do this and I'll see you in a month. Like, I do it every day. I work out every day. I take my meds every day. I take my vitamins every day. That's me. And that's why I feel confident in value saying to somebody else, this is what you should try to do. How about your journey? Because you've had a lifelong experience with exercise, nutrition, and then a shorter period of time with any sort of hormone optimization. And it's interesting because you were always very muscular, and you're still very muscular, but it's not like you're 310 pounds with veins coming out of your ears. And by the way, you didn't just go to the gas station and beat up every person in the state, and like, you know what I mean? Like, we need to talk about that stigma too, because you were always deliberate about your training.
Yeah.
So what experience did you have with that opening experience beyond just the training?
So the backstory is I started getting my blood work done independently right around my first kid, so 12 years ago. And there was nothing inherently wrong, but it got better when I started taking better care of myself. Shocker, right?
Shocker.
And I was at the point where, you know, I was probably right around 1,000 before TRT. I was about 1,000 total and probably 22-ish free. And then I got COVID. I got long COVID. It lasted like months. I felt terrible. And I remember getting this was before we were working together. I got my blood work done right after that long COVID bout. Yeah. And it looked like I aged 20 something years. And it's probably because, you know, nothing happens in a vacuum in the human body.
Stress.
So when you're under that kind of duress and cortisol and all the inflammatory markers went through the roof, my testosterone dropped. I think I was at like 515, which still is good. However, and this is why taking case by case, it's like essentially I went from 1,000 to 500, or a 50% reduction in roughly 6 months.
Yeah, that's not good for the body.
Mentally, I couldn't get out of my own way. I would say depressed, but more so I had no energy. You know me, I'd get up at 3 a.m, go to the gym, like whatever.
Yeah.
I struggled to get out of bed. I struggled to have drive and focus and like mental acuity. So, and my body took a hit. Like every old injury came up. I was just feeling like, man, I'm like 85 years old all of a sudden.
This is it.
And I exhausted all the options. I did, you know, IV therapies and peptide therapies, glutathione. I did all that stuff, and it definitely helped, but it wasn't the fix, because my next blood work came back. It was maybe 600. It was trickling up, but maybe, and this is where I was like, maybe I'm a good candidate for TRT. So I went, got it, and they're like, you definitely could use it. And they put me on a very low dose. I don't know if it's the minimum effective dose, but it was like, you know, 0.25, 0.3 once a week, right? But almost within 5 or 6 weeks, the first thing I noticed was I didn't have brain fog. Yeah. Like I could think again. That was like, it wasn't I put on 10 pounds of muscle or, you know, was able to bench press 500 pounds. It was like, oh my God, I could think. And I started to get back into a routine because I had just the mental bandwidth to reconcile the day-to-day of a busy dad, business owner, and so on and so forth. And now you fast forward, and you can speak on my labs way better than I can, but I'm probably back to where I was 10 years ago.
No doubt.
Like, biologically.
Yeah.
And I feel just that. So when people ask me about this, I was like, dude, if I woke up and all of a sudden I was 25, I'd be like, it feels the same as when I was 45.
Yeah, and I'm convinced the only aging factor on a human body that will really be like, oh, that's aging, is skin and hair, right? I think once we do figure out the right chemical way to treat kids, because this has to go into the pediatrics. Like, I do not know why we wait until 50 to like really start taking care of humans. We should really investigate the pediatric community. They are little adults. It just is what they are. Pediatric surgery, everyone will be like, they're not little adults. They're very different. No, it's a human. And if you want to tell me that it starts out as something and turns into something else, I don't know what to tell you, but that's false, right? Like, if you check the DNA, when they're born, it's human. And when they die, it's still human. So yes, they are little people when they're kids. We just need to treat them with more care, because they're so resilient that you can like chuck them down the stairs, they survive. You can feed them whatever you want, they survive. Most kids can eat McDonald's from age 5 to 20 and still live to 21. So you can essentially murder your kid with no consequence, no accountability, because there's no way you're going to see the back end problems, right? When a dad or mom dies, they don't watch their kid get to 70 and become wheelchair bound, right? So they don't see the consequence of them fucking up their kids when they were 5. Check out. And if the parents are into bad lifestyle, well, then great. Nobody cares. So I think that aging process, the thing you said that's most pertinent is, you actually chemically on the inside, if you sampled your blood and put it in a centrifuge, spun it and tested it, it would look the same as your blood when you were 18. Now, the beauty in that, if we had been doing it since we were 18 till now, cellular health would probably be the same. Liver health, heart, all of these things. The one organ in the body that's always the mystery is the heart, right? Because it has like a terminal amount of muscle. So you can't build heart muscle, you can't take it away. But I do believe it's meant to go for a really, 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 really long time, as long as you preserve the plumbing. That's a time for a different story. So I think in terms of these plateaus, like for somebody like you who was in the game forever, like you've been working out, you're in the exercise world, to then realize a difference and you're like, whoa, this was a whole different change. I mean, think about what you just said, mental acuity, professional ability, parenting, all of it. And part of the conversation we always have in here is like, one of the things we do in life is we're parents, right? So we don't just do this. I mean, we do this a lot, but parenting's another deal. So how do you then look at this in something about like the dads out there, and how do we touch them? Because it's one thing to just challenge them as an adult, right? Like I can go do a bunch of pull-ups, sit-ups, I can bench press 300 pounds, and I can give you the finger and I can say, I can lift more. Or there's guys online that are like, are you a dad that makes over $150,000? You should come see me. I mean, get a life, buddy, right? Like if he's going to challenge your financial income to come see him and he's not a doctor and he's just some garbage ex-athlete that's like just an influencer, go see that guy. His team of doctors will take good care of you.
Yeah, right.
Right? Or we can say to the dads out there, hey, buddy, come be healthy. And the reason you want to be healthy is because, listen, like we said before, your kids are watching, your wife, your girlfriend, your fiance or partner or whomever's watching. The world is watching, whether you like it or not. You and I walk into a room, people notice, right? You got veins on your arms. You got big muscles. You instantly demand some sort of visual contact, whether it's respect or not, but people will look. That's an instant command of respect. You walk into a meeting, I put this online yesterday because somebody commented on my clothes and my beard, and I was like, you know what? Here's the deal. I would love to have a meeting in the United States right now. I will attend it butt naked with every other doctor on the planet. No problem. Let's do it. You want to really get down to the nitty gritty of like take the covers off, right? Anybody can wear a suit. Anybody can wear a tie. Anybody can wear circle glasses. Anybody can part their hair perfectly, right? What's it take to get some veins in your quads? That's commitment, right? So I'm not challenging the physicality of that ever. We know what it takes to do that. We want to invite you in here more for that therapeutic effect, right? Like, yeah, here's why being a dad is important. Here's why, we always talk about dads and athletes and how that played into how we do in medicine, but like parenting's a profession. Like it needs to be looked at as a profession. So if you have kids and you just pay somebody to do all your kids stuff, well, those kids aren't going to be raised by you. They're going to have a very different perspective on life. So you want to be involved in that. And as a dad, I think what we can do with this environment, therapeutically, chemically, physically, exercise, nutrition driven, is incorporate these people into becoming better parents.
Yeah.
How has your experience with that been? Because mine's actually been pretty incredible.
The biggest thing I think about and why I was so desperate for help was because I was in an identity crisis. Despite how I was feeling physically and mentally and whatever, and I will define identity as roughly what you do
Right.
that makes you who you are. So if you don't do what your routine usually is, you have a tendency to feel off.
Yep.
And the longer that goes, the bigger disconnect and dissatisfaction you have with your life and
Yep.
who you think you are.
Yep.
And I was terribly frustrated that I wasn't showing up for the people I cared about in the way that I could. Like, I was still present, but I wasn't energetic, enthusiastic, like the engine
right.
for all these people. And I felt like I was essentially letting everyone down.
Yep.
And that comes back to like wanting to be a provider and being a support system and obviously protecting people and being able to provide, right? So I was in this huge mental conundrum of what the hell do I do to get back to doing what I want? That's part of my routine that provides for all these people in my life.
Yeah.
So that was the greatest motivator for me to seek help, was how do I get help so I can help other people?
Now, routine. I've never really thought about this perspective, but testosterone actually helps people keep a routine.
Without a doubt.
And I think that routine becomes engaging with movement again. So you start your life, you go to school or whatever, and you move and you run, and then you have recess and all of these things going on in your world. And then you get to an age where it's like, nope, sit in a room, sit at a desk, don't move. If you don't play sports in college, your movement is probably limited beyond that 18-year-old, 19-year-old mark. And then as you move less, your hormones go down, but you want to move less because you're not as motivated. The routine of movement gets lost. Why do we do that? I'm going to ask the population, like, why are we all on board with schools like getting rid of PE? I mean, Hamden Middle School currently is contemplating budgeting out sports. So wonderful, people. You have all of these club sports and private equity buying up teams. You're going to cancel the public school sports teams. You want to send the elites to another level and keep pushing the people down? That's how you do it. You take away physical activity. You take away organized sports where people can bond, where people can become friends. And guess what you have? A bunch of people that want to kill each other, fight. They're all tensed up because they have no routine. Extrapolate that to the adult. I believe that testosterone is the routine builder. That's an amazing statement. I never really thought about it like that. But it gives you the mental horsepower to then be like, oh, I'm getting up at 3 again. That felt good.
Yeah.
Oh, I lifted. I'm home at 5:30. Holy shit, my whole day I got it under my... That's the feeling. And I think that's actually an advantage. I don't know. I've never really said that out loud.
Well, then let me ask you
this question. A routine keeper.
Because a thing that TRT assists with is it stimulates androgen receptors, right? Most people think of it, androgen receptors in the muscle, but there's another organ that has a ton of androgen receptors, which is the brain.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling depressed, out of sorts, whatever, there is a good chance that maybe your testosterone is low, and it's not so much of a chicken or the egg scenario anymore, because we also know through the many examples with military individuals coming home with PTSD, when they give them testosterone replacement therapy, their depression or depressive symptoms get better.
Yeah.
So what is that all about? Like, how does, because the target organ of almost everything we do is the brain. So is there now an added benefit for, let's just say males in particular, having a TRT dose that stimulates those androgen receptors in the brain?
There is no question, like zero. And I think the brain's happiness is everything. Right? And those receptors are what causes the body to feel good. It is known in the medical world that if a chronic abdominal pain patient comes in, everybody's like, well, they're a little weird. That's an abdominal pain patient. Yeah. They have a terrible stomach ache all the time. Take that away and give somebody chronic back pain. Are those people really fun to be around? No. Why? Because their brain is hurting, not their back. The back could care less. It's just a bone and some nerves. It sends the signal to the brain, and the brain is what's miserable. So take a diabetic. It might not be bone pain. It might not be like, oh, I strained a muscle pain. But don't think the brain is not stressed when it knows the muscle's not getting enough fuel, and it's screaming at the pancreas to make more insulin, and it's screaming at the body to use it. how long do you think that brain is going to last being like, oh yeah, while I'm doing that, I'm just going to go do a little math at work. I'll do a little accounting. Ooh, let me operate on this person's heart while I'm railing in my brain trying to figure out how to make my body happy. You think those people are of sound mind and sound body? And listen, I actually want to take this even further. I had a thought last night about like workman's comp, right? And workman's comp cases come down to you got injured on the job, right? Great. It was your job's fault that you got injured, right? Great. Has anybody ever done pre-screening of all of their employees to prove that if that person already had a really weak right quad and they couldn't leg extend 20 pounds so that, yes, when they slipped on the ice and fell, they fucking pulled their quad tendon? That wasn't work, people. Yeah. That was the fact that they were a diabetic. They didn't ever exercise. They couldn't stress. They drank coffee till they were freaking numb in the face just to stay awake. Their insulin growth factor is at 0. Their vitamin C is at 0. They have no B3 to make ATP. And now you send that person sliding down a thing with 20 pounds on his back. Yeah, he popped his knee. Not because work was dangerous. Because that person wasn't prepared to work, right? Part of the deal. So I think we don't look at these stressors up here as much as we should. And I think that's an incredible statement you made. Like, if you have people's brains just reeling and not happy, their body's not going to respond well. And the body being injured will do the same thing back to the brain. So then what is it, the chicken or the egg? It's everything. It's the whole deal.
It's funny because like the body is just a bunch of feedback loops, right? And the center behind the feedback loop is essentially the brain, whether it's interpreting a signal or sending a signal. And what you were talking about, like it's sending a signal to the pancreas to just drive insulin, or it's trying to get your heart rate up so you don't pass out, whatever. That to me, just as an exercise guy, sounds like fatigue. It just sounds like fatigue. So when you think about someone who's really fatigued, they just crushed a workout and they're depressed, like their system is under duress. Yeah. So even if it wasn't the physical activity, it was their pancreas on overdrive or their heart rate going or their respiratory system under duress. It's fatigue. Yeah. How can you be really happy or optimized or maximized when you're just in a constant state of fatigue?
Yeah, I mean, I used to wear glasses constantly. My vision has significantly improved since I started testosterone. Significant. Like I don't need really far distance glasses anymore. And now a computer screen isn't blurred anymore. Now that's just testosterone therapy. And I'm saying that out loud. I can't like produce the data. I have no current measurement. But what I can tell you is I can see better. So we're at the end of relatively kind of first episode.